Get this. Last month, Mr. Beast, in another dick move, funded the construction of 100 wells across 5 countries in Africa to provide clean drinking water to 500,000 people. Good thing, right? No. Not good, bad. The founder of a charity called Face Africa called it kind of frustrating that overnight this person comes along who happens to be a white male figure with a huge platform, and all of a sudden he gets all of the attention. Yes, but you know what else is frustrating? Dying of thirst.
Good morning. It's Friday, Policecraft Friday, February the 9th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, the motivational shorts, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 Strategies of War, and Policecraft. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
When World War II was over, Uncle Sam said, "Boys, go home." No one had to twist my arm. I came back across the foam. Now things are in a mess again. The world is all agog. Old Joe Stalin in Moscow's eating too high on the hog. Mr. Stalin, you're eating too high on the hog. Mr. Stalin, quit feeding those lies to your mob. Now, Joe, you'd better change your way, or like Hitler, you will pay for eating too high on the hog. Joe's getting up in age, but to say he ain't so dumb. He knows all about ships and tanks and maybe atom bombs. If he keeps eating like he is, at his own discretion, one of these days he's gonna wake up with American indigestion. Mr. Stalin, you're eating too high on the hog. Mr. Stalin, quit feeding those lies to your mob. We know that you've got armies, and we know that they're big, but don't forget the ham is close to the tail end of the pig. Office boys, they came to the UN and made a lot of noise. They're only taking orders that come across from you, but your hammer and sickle just won't fit our red, white, and blue. Mr. Stalin, you're eating too high on the hog. Mr. Stalin, quit feeding those lies to your mob. Now listen, Joe, you know that you aren't used to eating meat. Act your age, be yourself, stick to Kremlin wheat. Mr. Stalin, you're eating too high on the hog. Mr. Stalin, quit feeding those lies to your mob. Now, we aren't hunting trouble, but we ain't never run. Let's all live and let live, Joe. Remember the rising sun? Quit eating too high on the hog.
Thank you. And now, the news.
Participating in the caucus tomorrow. That is the voting that actually counts for RNC delegates. Not exactly sure what Nikki Haley's team was thinking, but they opted to participate in Nevada's primary, despite no delegates being at stake. And she's not participating in the caucus. It was either one or the other. This is where things got a little bit weird. In Nevada's primary, well, voters are allowed to choose, quote, none of these candidates on the ballot. That option yesterday ended up beating Nikki Haley by over 30 points. Now, Nikki Haley's home state of South Carolina is up next. Now the question has got to be asked, after a third-place finish in Iowa in the caucuses there, double-digit loss in New Hampshire. Last night's numbers, the question is, if Nikki Haley doesn't win her home state, what is her path for the nomination? We'll ask her in a soon-to-come interview. All right, according to the Real Clear Politics average, as of now, she is losing to former President Donald Trump by more than 30 points in her home state of South Carolina. And speaking of polls, we have brand new Gallup surveys. They spell a lot more trouble for Joe Biden, as Democrats now are struggling with very key demographics that helped elect him in 2020. Look at the surveys conducted during the entirety of 2023. Democrats' advantage among non-Hispanic black voters is down to its lowest level since 1999, while their margin with Hispanic voters is now at its lowest level since 2011, down to just 12 points. But it's not just minority voters that Democrats are struggling with. They're also losing ground with young voters. According to the Gallup poll, their advantage with 18 to 29-year-old voters is now just 8 points. That's the lowest level since 2005. And while the Democrats and Biden are struggling in the polls, as a whole, perhaps no one has suffered a bigger polling crisis than your giggling vice president. That's right, Vice President Harris, who, according to a new NBC survey, now has a favorability rating of only 28% compared to 53% who have a negative view of her. And as Democrats continue sliding in these polls, the Supreme Court, they are poised to hear arguments over the left's attempt to remove Trump from the ballot in Colorado tomorrow. Now, a tactic that former Obama advisor, David Axelrod, he's a lot of things. He's not dumb. He called it very disruptive. Here's what he said earlier today. Take a look.
There are myriad legal questions that they're going to consider tomorrow. Some will undoubtedly offer off-ramps if they want an off-ramp. But I'm trying to imagine what it would be like if the Supreme Court said, we're removing the front-running Republican candidate from the ballot and essentially saying to the American people, you won't have the opportunity to vote for him. And I think it would be very, very disruptive in this country. I think it will create a huge reaction, and that worries me.
Well, it should, I think. Anyway, in terms of, does that, for the people that claim, democracy is in peril, how undemocratic. Meanwhile, Biden is refusing to sit down for a Super Bowl interview. This is now the second year in a row he has refused to do that. After yesterday, maybe it's kind of easy to see why. Let's refresh your memories.
There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas.
Oh, that's right. The terror group is called Hamas. What about all the people that were critical when I was one of the first people to point out this significant cognitive decline? You still defending Joe's cognitive state? Now, that wasn't Biden's only flub of the week. He also made a major slip-up when speaking at a campaign event in Vegas on Sunday. Let's refresh your memory on that one.
Right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. It was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from from France looked at me and said, how long are you back for?
Ask yourself a question. Have you ever gone to Walmart, Target, and a lot of times they have greeters. They tend to be older people, retired, that for whatever reason, maybe they're just bored, they want a little extra cash. They meet you, they greet you. Welcome to Walmart. And then you say, how are you? Can I help you with anything? They're the nicest, most helpful people you'll ever meet in your life, and pleasant and smart. I don't think Joe could be a Walmart greeter, because I don't think he could remember in a Walmart superstore whether or not where all of the different departments are. I don't think he could do that job. Newsflash to President Joe Biden. President Mitterrand died in 1996. So unless you're time traveling or you're speaking to a ghost, you didn't speak to President Mitterrand. No wonder Joe snubbed the Super Bowl interview now for the second year in a row.
And that was the news. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the patriotic short.
What exactly happens when fighter jets intercept an enemy aircraft? Let me explain. Well, first, the airspace controllers detect an unidentified or unauthorized aircraft approaching their airspace. Despite repeated attempts to establish communication, the aircraft remains unresponsive. In response, fighter jets are sent to intercept the aircraft. Both the fighter jets and the control tower try once again to establish radio contact with the plane. As the fighter jets close in, they visually assess the situation and try to see the intentions of the unresponsive aircraft. The pilots will even try nonverbal communication methods, such as hand signals and maneuvers. But if that doesn't work, things will get serious. The fighters will fly super close to try and get the aircraft to change direction, or even show off their weapons in an attempt to scare them away. If that fails, they threaten to shoot down the aircraft via the radio. Then if there's no response, they take down the aircraft. If the plane does cooperate, the fighter jets will act as escorts and take the aircraft away from the airspace.
And that was the patriotic short of the day. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of motivation.
What I'd like for you to do right now, I want you to think about your dream and envision it. I don't know what that dream is that you have. I don't care how far-fetched it might appear to be. I don't care how disappointing it might have been as you've been working toward that dream. But here's what I know, that dream that you're holding in your mind, that it's possible. See, sometimes we can't say, I can do that. But what we can say, that it's possible that I can have my dream as we run toward it, as we work on it day in and day out, that in the process of working on your dreams, you are going to incur a lot of disappointment, a lot of failure, a lot of pain, a lot of setbacks, a lot of defeats. But in the process of doing that, you will discover some things about yourself that you don't know right now. What you will realize is that you have greatness within you. What you'll realize is that you're more powerful than you can ever begin to imagine. What you will realize is that you're greater than your circumstances, that you don't have to go through life being a victim. So I applaud you for your dreaming, for your running toward your dream. I applaud you for believing in yourself, because that's what life is about, stretching and challenging, looking for ways that you can begin to improve yourself. It's necessary to know that everybody won't see it, that everybody won't join you, that everybody won't have the vision. It's necessary to know that a lot of people like to complain, but they don't want to do anything about their situation, that you are an uncommon breed. You have to know within yourself that I can do this. Even if no one else sees it for me, I must see it for myself.
Don't let anybody ever tell you that you're not good enough. And so many young people think that they can't, or they don't have the potential, or somebody else is better. Forget everything about it. I mean, if you really want something bad enough, if you really, really want something bad enough, you'll figure out a way to get there. And I really believe if you want something bad enough, you can will it to happen.
I had to convince myself that I'm going to make it, regardless of how people felt at that time. And there's going to be points that people are going to mistake my confidence for arrogance, because they don't understand the process I went through and how much I had to believe in myself in order to make these things happen. I feel like you can will yourself into a good space. Things that are meant to happen will. And if you believe in yourself enough, you can help yourself learn. You can inspire, yourself in different ways where you can actually discipline yourself, to the point that you can become good enough.
If you can, for the rest of your life, live inside of yourself, stop listening to people who are calling you fat. Everything that is makes no sense. All these insecure people putting their insecurities on you, you got to flush it out. You got to just be whoever the hell God or whoever the hell you believe in. If you believe in nothing but yourself, I don't care what it is. You got to take everything and throw it away. You have to believe in one thing, and that is yourself.
There will be people along the way who will say to you, you're dreaming too big. It's not possible. Don't allow anyone to tell you that what you are dreaming is not possible. It is possible.
I don't expect you to believe in my dream like I believe in my dream. And the problem with some of y'all is you want somebody else to support your dream. It's yours. I don't owe you a dime. It's your dream. If you want it to happen, get your butt up and make it happen. If you want it to happen, rise and grind.
Think about your own life. I know there have been areas in your life where some point in time you just shifted and you raised the standard and your life changed. Because whatever people have their identity attached to, they live. We live who we believe we are.
My journey from here to there was lonely. The reason? I was willing to be wrong and admit wrong so that I could grow and so that I could change. You see, growth is a result of bad habits dropped, wrong priorities changed, and new ways of thinking embraced. It happens only when we question ourselves enough to ask serious questions from others. The people who do not grow are unwilling to ask themselves or others hard questions. They are unwilling to leave what they have known and practiced. They are not willing to be wrong so they can discover what is right. Therefore, they cling to right, and their lives turn out wrong. How sad.
We get what we're looking for. We filter out everything else in our life. You're going to get what you're looking for even if it doesn't even exist. Even if it's not even there. If you're looking for negatives, if you're looking for setbacks, if you're looking to be looked over, you will find it even though it's not supposed to be there. But if you're looking for victory, for winning, for recruits, for people to change your life, for magic moments, you will find them if you're looking for them. I promise you that's true in life.
Your brain, when you condition it, knows exactly what to go for and will find a way to get there. When you decide what's most important to you, your brain goes after it.
Surrender of being right enables us to ask questions that others can answer and add value to us. Surrender of being right is the prerequisite to finding right. I believe that with all my heart. And here's what I know. I never want to get to the place where I've got it all figured out. I still want to keep learning. I still want to keep growing. And I still want to be a student. And I still want to be on a learning curve. And I still want to value people. And I still want to walk into their life and say, look, you have something that if I could just ask the right question, you could impart to me that would help me, that would allow me to become a better person myself.
Ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. Pride is the burden of a foolish person. If you're going to do a job, do it right. I've always been told how average I can be. Always been criticized about being average. But I want to tell you something. I stand here before you, before all of these people, not listening to those words, but telling myself every single day to shoot for the stars, to be the best that I can be. Good enough isn't good enough if it can be better. And better isn't good enough if it can be best. Wisdom will come to you in the unlikeliest of sources, a lot of times through failure. When you hit rock bottom, remember this. While you're struggling, rock bottom can also be a great foundation on which to build and on which to grow. I'm not worried that you'll be successful. I'm worried that you won't fail from time to time. The person that gets up off the canvas and keeps growing, that's the person that will continue to grow their influence.
The world does not reward mediocrity. You know what the rest of the world wants to pay you for? be the best at one thing.
If you know how to concentrate your efforts and be focused on one thing, you have an edge. If you can be focused on one thing and not look at everything else that everybody else is looking at, 50 different philosophies, 75 different ways to make money, 19 different streams of income. If you can figure out a way to go here, all of that stuff's going to come your way. But if you go chase all the other stuff like everyone else is, you're going to miss the whole point of winning in life because you can't concentrate. You show me anyone today who knows how to concentrate, I'll show you someone that nobody wants to compete with.
Number one, you got to have a permeating attitude that you're going to win. You got to have a positive outlook. You got to be optimistic. You got to know you're going to win. You got to, right now, you got to say, I'm going to win. I don't mean just this contest. I don't mean the contest. I mean, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. My life is going to win. There's going to be a victorious life here. Because listen to me, the price you pay for losing here is too extreme. You have to carry the burden of failure the rest of your life. You carry that around with you if you fail here. The biggest thing that breaks my heart is you feel the spirit right now. And then when you get back, these dream stealers run into you. And they start to steal your dream. And you quit. You give up. You got to decide I'm going to win. You got to decide that the failure part of carrying failure, you've been exposed to what your life could be. If you fail here, the price is extreme. It's forever. You carry the failure forever. I'm being honest with you. You got to know you're going to win. You got to sell out. Yeah, I'm telling you, you got to become a sellout. You need to sell out. You need to get obsessed. You got to get relentless. You got to be a road dog. You got to get intense. That's what you got to do. There's some dream stealers. You need to look out for these four. Dream stealer number one that'll take you out of here. Lack of confidence or faith. Lack of belief. It'll steal your dream. You got to know you're going to win. You got to have some faith. These people sitting around you right now, they're whispering to you, you could do this. I believe it. Just like when you were a little boy. Just like when you were a little girl. They've always believed in you. They've always known you were going to do something special. They always knew you were great. You need to know it. You need to take that God that's sitting there with you and those precious souls that have passed, that have always believed in you, and you carry them with you everywhere. They're with you anyway. Acknowledge them. If you don't believe that, honor them. Honor God. Honor these people who believed in you with your magnificent life. Honor them. Don't give in to lack of belief, lack of confidence. Don't ever do that again. You were made to do something great. You're special. You were made in the image of God. Something awesome is supposed to happen for you. And those of you that have made something awesome happen, something even more awesome is supposed to happen for you.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now for combat radio calls, this is going to be an F-14 or a couple of F-14s that shoot down two Su-22s. It's called Dogfight.
1, 2 enemy kills. 2 MiG-23s killed. Kill 2 MiG-23s. You copy, Barry? All right, that is right here. Mine was a sitter. 102-107, you copy. Let's vector north. 107, Marys. This is 102, go ahead. You relay for 107. I'd like to find out, were 1 or 2 hit? 102 and 107 are fine. We're both headed north. And there are 2... Roger that. I confirm you've got 2 MiG-23 kills. Okay, 1 was a fitter, and they probably both fitters, but there are 2 kills.
And that was the 2 F-14 shooting down a couple of Su-22s. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Daily Law for February the 9th.
February 9th. Redefine pleasure. One can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. Leonardo da Vinci. When you practice and develop any skill, you transform yourself in the process. You reveal to yourself new capabilities that were previously latent, that are exposed as you progress. You develop emotionally. Your sense of pleasure becomes redefined. What offers immediate pleasure comes to seem like a distraction, an empty entertainment to help pass the time. Real pleasure comes from overcoming challenges, feeling confidence in your abilities, gaining fluency in skills, and experiencing the power this brings. You develop patience. Boredom no longer signals the need for distraction, but rather the need for new challenges to conquer. Daily Law. See the fruits of discipline and skill as the richest pleasures of all. Mastery, Chapter 2. Submit to reality, the ideal apprenticeship.
And that was the Daily Law for February the 9th from the book The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Bishop Robert Barron.
Each individual person is a subject of infinite dignity, but not the creator of value. See, I think everybody, that is supremely dangerous talk. When we say that the sovereign self invents value, we are on a very short road to a moral chaos. Rather, we would say at the heart of our social theory ought to be love. What's love? Not a feeling. Love is an act of the will. It's to will the good of the other. If I'm inventing value, I got my value, you got your value, and let's just vaguely tolerate each other, then we can't love each other. Because love has to display itself, as it were, against the background of a hierarchy of objective value. Otherwise, I don't know what I should will.
Thank you. And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, "The deeper significance of the ecological crusade lies in the fact that it does expose a profound threat to mankind, though not in the sense its leaders allege. It exposes the ultimate motive of the collectivists, the naked essence of hatred for achievement, which means hatred for reason, for man, for life. In today's drugged orgy of boastful, self-righteous swinishness, the masks are coming down, and you can hear all but explicit confessions of that hatred." Unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Back in a minute. Thank you. If you're a Democrat, you need to vote Republican and become a Republican because President Biden is not only the face of the country, the leader of the country, but he is the titular head of the Democrat Party. And what he does reflects on the Democrat Party and everybody in it. So right now, the Democrat Party is a party that wanders around not knowing where it's going, what it's doing, or what it's saying. It is brain-addled. And you, as a voter, deserve better. That's why you need to vote Republican. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, this is, I believe it's Scott Pelley that is interviewing Jerome Powell, who is the Fed chairman.
We mostly try very hard not to comment on fiscal policy and instruct Congress on how to do their job when actually they have oversight over us.
But is the national debt a danger to the economy, in your view?
In the long run, the U.S. is on an unsustainable fiscal path. The U.S. federal government's on an unsustainable fiscal path, and that just means that the debt is growing faster than the economy.
I have the sense this worries you very much.
Okay, so that's the point, is this interviewer is being neutral. I get the sense that this worries you very much. It should worry the interviewer, because what he's talking about is the economy and the fiscal or economic stability of the entire country. If the economic stability of this entire country falls apart, we become unstable, that's going to affect Mr. Pelley just as much as it affects everybody else. How can you sit there as an interviewer and be neutral in the face of that? This is what I'm talking about. It's called the cult of neutrality. Nobody is neutral. Nobody. Back in a minute. Thank you. I was listening to Hugh Hewitt today is the 8th, February 8th. I was listening to Hugh Hewitt, and they're talking about a bill coming to going through that is stripped of border provisions, so that there's money sent to Taiwan, to the Ukrainians, and to the Israelis. And so then there's the issue. Apparently, there's a rumor going around that Marjorie Taylor Greene has threatened to that if it passes the Senate, this bill passes the Senate, and if Speaker Johnson goes ahead and brings this to the floor for a vote, she's threatening to bring a motion to vacate. And again, what I'm going to say is it's very, very important for all would-be conservatives, and that is you don't have to be a lightning rod to be a conservative. You don't have to be a whipping boy to be a conservative. You don't have to hang a kick me sign on your back in order to be a conservative. You can be shrewd about it. Two things that Miss Marjorie Taylor Greene could do. It's basically one idea with two variations, and that is just to express confidence in the speaker, that the speaker will do the right thing. So you could say it like that. You could say, I'm confident that Speaker Johnson will do what's right, and that no motions to vacate will be necessary, and he will do the right thing. And then you see what happens and go from there. The other way is to, as I've said before, you say that you've spoken to somebody that's associated or affiliated with Speaker Johnson, and you say that one of his people has assured you that he's going to do the right thing, or they've assured you that he will not bring this to the floor for a vote, whatever, right? Let's say not bring this to the floor for a vote, and no motion will be necessary, no motion to vacate. This way, again, the pressure is put on the speaker where it belongs and not on you. Speaker has additional authority within the House of Representatives and additional responsibility. Let him accept that responsibility and go from there. There's no reason for Marjorie Taylor Greene, as a would-be conservative, again, to hang a kick-me sign on her back or be some kind of a lightning rod for controversy. It's unnecessary. She doesn't need to become a martyr. We don't have martyrs as conservatives. There's no reason. We don't have a movement, okay, because we make the presumption for the status quo. We don't make the presumption for change the way that the left does. So, therefore, she does not need, again, to make herself the center of attention, make Speaker Johnson the center of attention, put the pressure on him, and go from there. Back in a minute. Thank you. So more about Varney and Company and people like that and Sean Hannity. And one of the things that I just flashed on the other day is that the reason that they struggle, because they really struggle, they really do. And I'm not going to say probably, I'm going to say definitely the reason that they struggle is because of the combination of news and analysis. If you listen to Sean Hannity, he'll tell you from time to time that what he does is news and analysis. The problem with that is news requires nonpartisanship. Notice I didn't say objectivity or being neutrality. Notice I didn't say neutrality. Nonpartisanship. But analysis requires partisanship. There's no such thing as nonpartisan analysis. There's no such thing as neutral analysis. Okay, so if he wants to be more effective, he needs to choose. Are you going to be an analyst or are you going to be a news guy? And if you're going to be a news guy, then fine, be nonpartisan. But don't give us any of your commentary. Unless you're prepared to then, when you're doing the commentary, be partisan. But the problem, of course, if you do that, is it's going to hurt your credibility on the news side. So really the best way to handle it is pick one or the other. Sean Hannity et al. Need to decide, are we going to be news or are we going to be analysts? You want to be analysts, then be partisan and unabashedly partisan. If you're going to do news, then you need to be nonpartisan. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now we pick up where we left off with the 33 strategies of war.
Instead, he projected onto the Afghans the values of an Englishman, which he mistakenly assumed were universal. Blinded by narcissism, he misread every signal along the way. As a result, his strategic moves, leaving the British Army occupying Kabul, halving the Gilgis' stipend, trying not to overplay his hand in putting down the rebellions, were exactly the opposite of what was needed. And on that fateful day when he literally lost his head, he made the ultimate miscalculation, imagining that money and an appeal to self-interest would buy loyalty among the very people he had so humiliated. Blindness and narcissism like this are not so rare. We find them every day. Our natural tendency is to see other people as mere reflections of our own desires and values. Failing to understand the ways they are not like us, we are surprised when they do not respond as we had imagined. We unintentionally offend and alienate people, then blame them, not our inability to understand them, for the damage done. Understand, if you let narcissism act as a screen between you and other people, you will misread them, and your strategies will misfire. You must be aware of this and struggle to see others dispassionately. Every individual is like an alien culture. You must get inside his or her way of thinking, not as an exercise in sensitivity, but out of strategic necessity. Only by knowing your enemies can you ever hope to vanquish them. From 6 Secret Teachings by Taigung. Be submissive so that he will trust you, and you will thereby learn about his true situation. Accept his ideas and respond to his affairs as if they were twins. Once you have learned everything, subtly gather in his power. Thus, when the ultimate day arrives, it will seem as if heaven itself destroyed him. The Close Embrace. In 1805, Napoleon Bonaparte humiliated the Austrians in the battles of Ulm and Austerlitz. In the subsequent treaty, he carved up the Austrian Empire, taking over its lands in Italy and Germany. For Napoleon, all this was part of a chess game. His ultimate goal was to make Austria an ally, a weak and subordinate ally, but one that would lend him weight in the courts of Europe, since Austria had been a central force in European politics. As part of this overall strategy, Napoleon requested a new Austrian ambassador to France, Prince Clemens von Metternich, at the time the Austrian ambassador to the Prussian court in Berlin. Metternich, then 32, came from one of Europe's most illustrious families. A speaker of impeccable French, a staunch conservative in politics, he was a paragon of breeding and elegance and an inveterate ladies' man. The presence of this polished aristocrat would add a sheen to the imperial court that Napoleon was creating. More important, winning over a man of such power, and Napoleon could be quite seductive in private meetings, would help in his grand strategy of making Austria a weak satellite. And Metternich's weakness for women would give Napoleon a way in. The two men met for the first time in August 1806, when Metternich presented his credentials. Napoleon acted coolly. He dressed well for the occasion, but kept his hat on, which in the mores of the time was rather rude. After Metternich's speech, short and ceremonious, Napoleon began to pace the room and talk politics in a way that made it clear he was in command. He liked to stand up to talk to people while they remained seated. He made a show of speaking pointedly and concisely. He was not some Corsican rube for the sophisticated Metternich to play with. In the end, he was sure he had made the impression he wanted. Over the months to come, Napoleon and Metternich had many more such meetings. It was the emperor's plan to charm the prince, but the charm ran inescapably the other way. Metternich had a way of listening attentively, making apt comments, even complimenting Napoleon on his strategic insights. At these moments, Napoleon would beam inside. Here was a man who could truly appreciate his genius. He began to crave Metternich's presence, and their discussions of European politics became more and more frank. The two became friends of sorts. Hoping to take advantage of Metternich's weakness for women, Napoleon set up his sister, Caroline Murat, to have an affair with the prince. He learned from her a few pieces of diplomatic gossip, and she told him that Metternich had come to respect him. In turn, she also told Metternich that Napoleon was unhappy with his wife, Empress Josephine, who could not bear children. He was considering divorce. Napoleon did not seem upset that Metternich knew such things about his personal life. In 1809, seeking revenge for its ignominious defeat at Austerlitz, Austria declared war on France. Napoleon only welcomed this event, which gave him a chance to beat the Austrians still more soundly than before. The war was hard fought, but the French prevailed, and Napoleon imposed a humiliating settlement, annexing whole sections of the Austrian Empire. Austria's military was dismantled, its government was overhauled, and Napoleon's friend Metternich was named foreign minister, exactly where Napoleon wanted him. Several months later, something happened that caught Napoleon slightly off guard, but delighted him. The Austrian emperor offered him his eldest daughter, the Archduchess Marie-Louise, in marriage. Napoleon knew that the Austrian aristocracy hated him. This had to be Metternich's work. Alliance by marriage with Austria would be a strategic tour de force, and Napoleon happily accepted the offer, first divorcing Josephine, then marrying Marie-Louise in 1810. Metternich accompanied the Archduchess to Paris for the wedding, and now his relationship with Napoleon grew still warmer. Napoleon's marriage made him a member of one of Europe's greatest families, and to a Corsican, family was everything. He had won a dynastic legitimacy he had long craved. In conversation with the prince, he opened up even more than before. He was also delighted with his new empress, who revealed a keen political mind. He let her in on his plans for empire in Europe. In 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia. Now Metternich came to him with a request: the formation of an army of 30,000 Austrian soldiers at Napoleon's disposal. In return, Napoleon would let Austria rebuild its military. Napoleon saw no harm in this step. He was allied with Austria by marriage, and rearmament there would help him in the end. Months later, the Russian invasion had turned into a disaster, and Napoleon was forced to retreat, his army decimated. Now Metternich offered his services as a mediator between France and the other European powers. Centrally placed as it is, Austria had performed that task in the past, and anyway, Napoleon had little choice. He needed time to recoup. Even if Austria's role as a mediator allowed it to reassert its independence, he had little to fear from his in-laws. By the spring of 1813, negotiations had broken down, and a new war was about to break out between the badly damaged France and a powerful alliance of Russia, Prussia, England, and Sweden. By this time, the Austrian army had grown considerably. Somehow Napoleon had to get his hands on it, but his spies reported that Metternich had entered into secret agreement with the Allies. Surely this had to be some sort of ploy. How could the Austrian emperor fight his son-in-law? Yet in a few weeks it became official. Unless France negotiated a peace, Austria would drop its mediating position and join the Allies. Napoleon could not believe what he was hearing. He traveled to Dresden for a meeting with Metternich, which took place on June 26th. The moment he saw the prince, he felt a shock. The friendly, nonchalant air was gone. In a rather cold tone, Metternich informed him that France must accept a settlement that would reduce it to its natural boundaries. Austria was obligated to defend its interests and the stability of Europe. Suddenly it occurred to the emperor: Metternich had been playing him all along. The family ties merely a ploy to blind him to Austrian rearmament and independence. So I have perpetrated a very stupid piece of folly in marrying an Archduchess of Austria? Napoleon blurted out. Since your Majesty desires to know my opinion, Metternich replied, I will candidly say that Napoleon, the conqueror, has made a mistake. Napoleon refused to accept Metternich's dictated peace. In return, Austria dropped its neutrality and joined the Allies, becoming their de facto military leader. And with Austria leading the way, they finally defeated Napoleon in April 1814 and exiled him to the Mediterranean island of Elba. Interpretation. Napoleon prided himself on his ability to gauge people's psychology and use it against them, but in this case, he was outwitted by a man far superior at such a game. Metternich's modus operandi was the following. He would quietly study his enemies from behind his smiling, elegant exterior, his own apparent relaxation inviting them to open up. In his very first meeting with Napoleon, he saw a man straining to impress.
And that was the next part of Chapter 13, Know Your Enemy, from the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Policecraft by Adam Plantinga.
9. Safeguards and dangers. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. The fearful are caught as often as the bold. Helen Keller. The field of law enforcement requires you to be well versed in all manner of threats, not just those posed by suspects with weapons. So you are trained not to park over a vault or manhole during an electrical emergency because they can blow up, and you're taught that it isn't just metals that become energized. So can trees, wooden ladders, and rope. If you arrive at a residential gas leak, you know not to step on the doormat, which could cause a buildup of static electricity that will spark, and you know better than to ring the doorbell, which could act as an ignition source. Lots of nots and don'ts in this job. Another one is don't let someone get chewed up in an escalator. All escalators are state mandated to have 2 kill switches, one at the foot of the stairs and one at the top. This is vital to be aware of because commuters have gotten everything from hair to scarves stuck in the escalator's metal teeth and been scalped or asphyxiated as the stairs keep grinding interminably away. So if need be, look for the bright red button and push it as hard as you can. Don't use a fire extinguisher if the fire you're facing is larger than the extinguisher itself. Otherwise, you've bitten off more than you can chew, and the fire is just going to spread as your extinguisher putters out, and you squander valuable time you should have been using to flee. If a building or structure does become engulfed, you'll sometimes see cops run in there without any protective gear. Firefighters call this the blue canary effect. If the officers pull someone to safety, they will be lauded as heroes. But more often than not, the police rush in, save no one, and emerge with serious lung damage. I came close to the latter category once when I charged into a burning house in the Ingleside district after a woman screamed out, "My mom is still inside!" I got as far as the front hallway where I was met with stifling darkness and a wall of smoke and heat. I staggered right back out, coughing, gulping in air, hands clutching my knees in the classic tripod position. I had been in the building for around 2 seconds, and I felt like I was already clinging to life. There was no way I was saving anyone inside. I just would have become another body the fire department would need to step over. And as it turned out, the mother wasn't in the building at all. She was waiting for her family a half block away. Remember when you were a kid and your parents would do a fire drill and have an agreed-on meeting spot so everyone would know where everyone else was? I don't think people do that anymore. If someone falls or jumps into the water, you, as a uniformed cop, have to do the same kind of clinical risk assessment you'd use during a fire. Do you go in after them? If you make the leap with all your gear on, your ballistic vest and wool uniform will take on water. Unless you're a strong swimmer, you'll sink like someone just lashed an anchor to your boots. But you can't just hand your equipment belt, gun and all, to the homeless guy on the pier and ask him to please watch it for you. You'll also have to figure the body of water you're about to enter is likely cold, with poor visibility, and spotted with everything from needles to human waste, as urban waterways are not known for their pristineness. And you know that drowning people, in a frenzied panic, sometimes drown their rescuers. Belonging to a profession with a motto like protect and serve means you can't very well just stand there and watch someone die. Maybe you look for a branch or a pole to extend to the person in the water. Or you cross yourself and take the plunge despite the substantial risk. Whatever the case may be, you want to avoid becoming part of the problem unless you don't mind a Marine unit fishing 2 corpses out of the water instead of 1. If you're about to go hands-on with a suspect, hopefully you've been able to size him up and notice if he's already got his arms apart for counterbalance or is wearing a regional Taekwondo Ultra Champion t-shirt. Because if your potential arrestee is a trained fighter, it's liable to be a long day for you. Experienced martial artists can deliver kicks upwards of 90 miles an hour, like a big league fastball. And they aren't kicking you with their foot, which is comparatively soft. They're using their shin, which isn't nearly as forgiving. Even more dangerous than the karate man is someone who knows what they're doing with a knife. They learn on the streets or in prison that you don't show your opponent the knife, but you make sure he feels it. They deliver a salvo of quick surgical strikes. And one of the primary but unorthodox targets they choose is the anus, which is potentially a killing strike for 2 reasons. That area both tends to gush blood and creates a wound that cannot easily be sealed. Because, as a self-defense instructor once pointed out to me, you can't very well put a tourniquet on a guy's ass. You're a cop out there, not a physician, but you need to show up to work with some game and recognize medical emergencies for what they are, because you'll see plenty. Like shock, which author William Giraldi once pointed out looks like a cross between surprised and sleepy, or AMS, altered mental state, which often presents itself when a suspect goes from 100 miles per hour straight down to 0 after a struggle, or delirium tremens, DTs, which stems from sudden alcohol withdrawal and causes chills, fever, and hallucinations, which is why many heavy drinkers need medically planned detox to avoid lapsing into a coma. You are trained that if someone passes out on you and then comes to with a distinct color change to their face, it's likely a cardiac event. Don't let them stand up. Standing up could kill them. You know that there are only 2 situations when you should give food or water in a medical emergency. The first is for diabetics. The second is for heat exhaustion. If an infant's pulse is less than 60 beats per minute, start CPR. Infant pulses should be over 100. If you think someone is having a stroke, you look for an uneven cast to their face and listen for slurred speech. But the best test is to have them put their arms out straight, like the mummy. If one arm lags, it probably is a stroke. And finally, there's the woman in labor. Oh boy. If you're in a major metropolitan area, the ambulance will probably get there soon, but until then, it's all you. If mom's water has broken and contractions are less than 2 minutes apart, that kid is coming, and coming soon. You tell mom to breathe and push, just as they do on television. You want to apply gentle pressure to the baby's head to stop it from shooting out. Once the head is through, you're more or less in the clear. You hold the baby under the arms and dry him, especially the head, and keep him warm. If it's been over 30 seconds and he hasn't breathed on his own, start rescue breathing and praying. After about 20 minutes, the placenta arrives. If the ambulance still hasn't shown by then, it's because the firefighters, sprawled out on love seats playing Fallout 4, don't understand what the word labor means. Pulled over by the police? Do yourself and the officer a favor and don't get out of the car unless asked. It isn't just because stepping out near oncoming traffic can be dangerous. It's because police officers have been murdered by people who have gotten out of their cars during traffic stops. As a cop, you want to contain the occupants of a vehicle. You want to control their movements, so you might instruct them to keep their hands on the steering wheel while you talk to them and not to reach into any purses or bags unless specifically requested. Now, as a citizen, you may think, wait a second, hurt a cop? That's madness. Not you. You're a pillar of the community. In fact, you're the head of the junior league and you're wearing a respectable sweater. And to that, we say, great, keep up the good work. And you're right, that is a notable sweater. But we just met. You are a complete unknown to us. And murderers don't always look like murderers, just like thieves don't always look like the Hamburglar. Plus, it's dark out. And it's the hands and what's in them that will hurt a cop. Until we run you up for warrants and see for ourselves what kind of record you have, we will be on high guard. So get back in your car, please, and stay there unless otherwise prompted. Do this, and we will get along famously. It is true that police officers overreact to danger from time to time. In fact, you know what this job does to you? If a citizen offers you lemonade on a hot day, you'll say thanks for the thoughtful gesture, but you won't take it unless it's an unopened bottle or can, because you'll fear it's been doctored with spit or urine or a roofie. Maybe Costanza slipped you a Mickey. Danger is afoot. On some basic level, this reaction is insane. I've never heard of a cop poisoned by a beverage given to him by a citizen. It's the kind of thing that happens only in Miss Marple novels. But your guard is always up. This same approach is why many police officers won't shake hands with anyone. It's a hazard of the profession. You're taught that if your hand is occupied with a handshake, you're compromised. Someone could pull you off balance or go for your gun. So you give them a fist bump or a curt nod. Your gun hand remains eternally free. I stray from this philosophy on occasion, especially with crime victims, witnesses, and even some suspects, because at times it strikes me as wrong not to shake hands. At times it seems a handshake is exactly what's called for. And I figure the high commercial value of the public seeing a cop shake hands with a citizen is also worth considering. That being said, every so often I extend my hand and think, well, this could be a mistake. Want to know why cops are on edge? Perhaps it's the Kill a Cop challenge you just saw on Facebook, or the phone call from the prison guard who just found your name on the hit list of a street gang during a cell toss, or the morning lineup where the warrants list includes a man wanted for 2 counts of armed robbery and 1 count of felony assault. This suspect, you were told, is a 3-strike candidate and has told relatives that he will not return to prison and will shoot any officer he sees. Or the last brawl you were in, where one suspect said to another words that speared you through with dread. Get his gun. Or people like Lawrence Wallace, Jr., who hid a small knife in a bandage and stabbed Mobile police officer Stephen Green to death in February of 2012 while Wallace was being transferred to county lockup. Or the afternoon you spent in a hospital room waiting to hear how much of your partner's intestines the surgeon would have to remove after he was gut shot on Halloween night by an auto thief. Things like that. It's easy for the public to cry out, "Stop overreacting." But when you're a cop and you overreact, maybe you get a citizen complaint. Underreact, and maybe you're all kinds of dead. The danger doesn't boil down to a simple numbers game. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's more deadly to be a fisherman or logger than a police officer. In fact, law enforcement routinely fails to make the top 10 most dangerous jobs in the U.S. in terms of casualties at work. But those figures can be a bit misleading. Deaths in those kinds of professions often stem from heavy equipment accidents and rough weather. As far as I'm aware, people tend not to murder loggers on the job. And these figures don't include injuries, which cops are subject to after knockdown fights with suspects or high-speed vehicle accidents. You don't work with fish. You work with people who are twitchy and unpredictable and have weapons and don't like jail. So when you're on the street, danger hangs over you like a shroud. You do a job that punishes you and the public when you're careless. So you don't give many folks out there the benefit of the doubt. Like, for instance, that special kind of adult idiot who trains a laser pointer on a cop because he thinks it's funny. That guy's subsequent arrest report will read something like this. I observed the red laser dot across my chest, which caused an immediate concern for my safety because I believed a weapon was being pointed at me. Due to my training and experience, I commonly associate a red laser as the target acquisition tool for a firearm. These various hazards are why you will never see a squared-away cop with his hands in his pockets on the street, even if it's cold. You keep your hands out and free, preferably above your waist, ready to block or throw a punch, or return fire, or munch on an apple fritter, or deliver a baby. But some days you run through the tools on your belt, gun, stick, spray, and realize none of them are quite going to cut it. If time permits, you need to think beyond the use of force manual. One of the very best examples of this was a 1997 incident in Seattle where officers faced off with a deranged man wielding a samurai sword on a downtown street. The situation was resolved when the police knocked the man down using water from a high-pressure fire hose, pinned him with a ladder, and took the sword away without serious injury to anyone on scene. The hose and ladder approach wasn't found in any department guidebook, but it was a thing of beauty, belonging in the pantheon of excellence alongside Kim Novak in Vertigo, the throaty blues of the Reverend Gary Davis, and desserts with a graham cracker crust. In 400 Things Cops Know, I remarked on how bad of a shot criminals often are. Cops aren't always much better. We react well to danger, but police aren't immune from the stress that accompanies the use of deadly force. No one is. So it's not uncommon for 3 cops to dump, say, 10 rounds each on a suspect at reasonably close range and only hit him a handful of times. This errant aim comes up much more commonly in vicious dog encounters. Dogs are smaller and quicker targets than people, and when police elect to shoot them, they frequently miss. Prevailing wisdom is that if a dog hasn't attacked you yet, it probably won't. But regardless, you want to get big on a dog you think might be dangerous, which means standing tall and holding your hands out. Shout, "Sit," and "Stay," so he knows who the alpha is. If you turn your back and retreat, that mutt is going to be all over you. Some cops claim that if a dog charges, they'll give it their forearm and will only fire if it latches on. The dog is more of a stationary target then anyway. Others in the business say, forget it. Give a dog your forearm, and those popping sounds you'll hear will be it vigorously chewing through your tendons. There goes your racquetball game forever. When it comes to evaluating danger, nothing is more common than the threat complaint. It's a familiar assignment for police officers. Threats come in person, on the phone, online, and via third parties. They usually stem from some relationship gone bad, or neighbor trouble, or gang-related malarkey. They often take one of 3 forms. 1. I'm gonna burn your house down. 2. I'm gonna blow your house up. 3. I'm gonna kill you. People often ask you what you're going to do about this threat. The answer can vary wildly. First, you have to identify the threatening party. When I worked in Milwaukee, such a threat would typically amount to a $167 disorderly conduct citation. In California, it falls under the category of criminal threats, which is a felony, but is usually charged as a misdemeanor. So you can make the arrest, but nobody is going to stay in jail very long. The follow-up question is, what if this person does try to kill me or burn/blow up my house? Well, as my first FTO, Gilbert Gwynn, once pointed out, the police can't arrest someone for what they might do. This isn't Minority Report. What you usually tell people is that your department takes thousands of complaints involving threats to burn or blow up homes, and very few of those result in a house actually being burned or exploded. As for death threats, it's mostly just talk. The death threat is among the threats least likely to be carried out, writes Gavin de Becker, author of The Gift of Fear, who studies violent behavior for a living. Most death threats, de Becker points out in his book, are mere intimidations, especially if they contain words like if, until, and unless. But what if this time it actually happens, is the typical follow-up question, to which you respond that if you have unobligated patrol time, you'll make extra passes by their house and keep an eye out. You recommend a restraining order. Other than that, they're on their own. People don't like to hear that. They want, I think, to have the police detailed to their house on a 24/7 protective detail, ever vigilant, with the ability to mobilize in seconds. But nobody gets that treatment, except for the president, and maybe Kylie Jenner. If your partner is driving and you're the passenger and you come upon a wanted vehicle, it's instinctive for your partner to move in and block its driver's side doors with the passenger doors of your squad car. Then your partner will run around the back of both cars to cover the occupants of the suspect vehicle at gunpoint. The upside to this approach is that it seals in the driver, preventing him from fleeing on foot. The downside is that the police car is parked so close to the suspect vehicle that you, the passenger, cannot get out. And if the driver of the car you are 6 inches away from is armed, you are trapped right in the middle of the kill zone. Given these tight quarters, this seat position is called the Grey Poupon spot, named for the venerable mustard TV commercials that ran in the 80s. I've been in the Grey Poupon seat before, and once nearly tumbled into the lap of the driver of a stolen car while I was trying to crawl out the passenger side window. Awkward. When the dust has settled, your partner, who has pouponed you, is required to do 2 things. Apologize, buy you coffee, and a baked good of your choosing. When a suspect pulls a gun on you, you will shoot him. Cops don't do warning shots. Maybe this particular gunman had no intention of using the gun. Maybe he was going to throw it away or politely hand it over to you for safekeeping. Maybe his adrenaline was pumping so hard and his brain was so addled from stress that he had no idea what he was doing. Could be he's socially and academically disadvantaged and comes from a fractured home, or was just about to do something positive in his life. Get a job, marry his pregnant girlfriend, re-enroll in school. It's possible the gun isn't loaded, or is just a replica firearm. None of that enters into your considerations. You are willing to take significant risks as a police officer. You do so every time you put on the uniform. But you are not some kind of sacrificial lamb waiting your turn to die. Pull a gun on a cop, whether it's real or fake. The police aren't trained to stick their face near a suspect's gun barrel to examine it for workability, and you have punched your own ticket. You will be shot, and you will likely die. Expect that. Upon receiving a 911 hang-up call from a residence, you and your partner don't automatically call for the command van, burst through the door, and tactically somersault into the living room with your hands in the ready position. There could be an actual emergency, but there could also be quite a few innocuous explanations. Crossed wires on the phone line, kids horsing around, a plain old misdial. If someone comes to the door, you let them know why you're there. If they say they don't know what the 911 call was all about, you might tell them you don't care if they have a few blunts on the table or overdue DVDs from the library. You're just there to poke your head in all of the rooms to make sure nobody is dead or dying, to make sure all is well. And it often is. But you have to check. And if someone comes to the door and tells you that you can't come in, that's when you give them one fair warning to open up, and if they don't heed it, well, just standing around hoping for the best really isn't enough. So you plant your size 11 tactical boot just underneath the doorknob and kick that mother open, order everyone down at gunpoint, and see for yourself what's up. Because you're not going to be the cop who walks away from a house where a parent is bound in a closet or a child is dying in a bathtub. Doors can be repaired, explanations and apologies can be offered, but that's all later. This is now, and now you must make sure. Regular viewers of the evening news might think it's too dangerous to venture onto the streets, which constantly seem to be on the verge of either a pandemic or a hostage situation. You are well versed in the perils of microwaved plastics, swine flu, and eco-terrorists, but you have to get out of the bunker here and there. So don't skip the symphony just because you have to walk through a somewhat dodgy neighborhood to get there. Don't take a pass on the farmer's market because some alarmist said the skateboarders in those parts are particularly aggressive this year. And even though tonight's breaking news story is man stabbed on subway, don't forget that your last 1,000 subway rides have been entirely without incident. This is your city and you are supposed to play in it. You pay enough in property taxes. None of this means you can put the blinders on. You cannot eliminate risk, but you can reduce it. Listen to your gut. If your instincts tell you to cross the street because you don't like the looks of the trio of young people coming your way, then cross the street. If the warning bell in your head sounds when the ostensibly nice stranger offers to carry your groceries into your house, don't ignore it. Maybe you fear you'll come across as skittish to the youngsters or rude to the helpful fellow, but that's just common sense at work. And all the while, look up from your smartphone. Know what's going on around you. Don't be a soft target. And live your life. No one is going to live it for you. If Helen Keller can do it, so can the rest of us.
And that was chapter 9. And from Policecraft, What Cops Know About Crime, Community, and Violence by Adam Plantinga, read by Steve Marvel. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.